So if you want, we can make this really informal. Like, I like to interact. We can, if you have questions, raise your hand. We can talk about some of this stuff as we go through it. Like, this isn't a TED Talk. Like, I'm not that good of a public speaker, right, to get up here and deliver a TED Talk to you all. So as we're going through, if something stands out, or if you just have a question, or you want to just kind of interact, definitely do that. I think it makes this a lot more fun, a lot more engaging than just listening to me talk for an hour about influence, right? I'm sure this isn't everybody's necessarily favorite topic, but it is important. It's important for you as you move into your careers, as you finish up your degrees, as you get out into the workforce. For many of you who are already starting jobs, already beginning a career, maybe you're in the middle of an internship and you're preparing to start your career very shortly. Who's graduating 2020? Anybody graduating this year? A couple of us. What about 2021? A lot of us. Okay, so the next year to 2 years, many of us are going to be leaving Lamar, and hopefully you don't have to come back like I did. And we're going to start our careers. So influence is going to be something that's very important for you. Understanding how to influence other people, specifically today, some of the things we'll be talking about, how to get things done, how to accomplish things. So again, make sure we're interacting, we can have some fun, and we can enjoy the next hour that we get to spend together. So like she said, I work for Walgreens. Does anybody here fill prescriptions at Walgreens? Oh God, it's not CVS for everybody else, is it? No. Does everybody here have health insurance? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, most people think of Walgreens, they're like, oh yeah, crap, I forgot a gift card. Or like, I need a gallon of milk, so they go to Walgreens.
It seems a little more expensive than CVS.
Oh, you son. By the way, thank you for trying to help me fix the paper towel dispenser in the bathroom. It's broken, if anybody needs to wash their hands. Yeah, so Walgreens is a Fortune 500 company. In 2019, we were actually ranked number 17 on the Fortune 500 list for business. And it's a lot more than just that place where you go when you forgot to get a Hallmark card for somebody's birthday, or you need a piece of candy or whatever, right? Like, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. It's the first and only global pharmacy company in the world. And a lot goes on in the pharmacy industry and in the pharmacy business. So influence is a large part of my job as a store manager working for Walgreens. Like she said a minute ago, I manage our front end, which is our retail side, and our pharmacy operations. And at my location, we have about 20 employees or so, which isn't too many. Some of the other locations have upwards of 40 to 50 employees. And when you want to get things done, when you want to accomplish things, and you have that many team members, you have to be able to influence people, right? Like, I can't go out and manage all 20 of these people by myself. And it's very similar in any industry where you have multiple team members, multiple employees, multiple direct reports. So for myself, that looks like just a handful of team members that I directly manage, that I have to influence them to also be able to go out and influence other people to get their job done and to do the things that they need to do. There's a lot of really important things that happen in the pharmacy that if you're not able to influence people, things can go very wrong, right? Like, we deal with fill prescriptions for lots and lots of different things, and some of these prescriptions, if they're filled incorrectly, they can kill people. Or if people aren't taking their medication correctly, they're not going to be as healthy as they could be if they were being more adherent to their medications. And so we also have, state board will come into our locations a lot of times, and they'll do audits, and Medicare Part B people will come into our location. For example, last year we had a company-wide, Walgreens-wide Medicare Part B audit. And we obviously don't need to get into all this, the background for all the insurance things. But had enough stores failed this audit, Walgreens would have lost their Medicare Part B contract, which is about 70% of our prescriptions that we would no longer been able to fill. So basically, we just would have went out of business, right? And so there's all these policies, all these procedures, all these things that we have to follow, these checklists, all these things that we have to do. And I have to be able to influence these people who work in my pharmacy manager, my other pharmacists, to not screw this up. Because if they screw it up, then it's probably going to be my job. It's definitely going to be their job. And in a bigger picture, it could be all of the Walgreens as a company, right? And so a lot of that comes down to influence and my ability to whether or not I'm able to persuade, to influence, to motivate them to do the job the way that they're supposed to, and to do it correctly, to do it well. So before we get started, any questions about any of that kind of stuff before we kick this off about influence? Well, let's do it. So this is kind of where we're headed. Here's some of the things that we'll talk about this afternoon. We'll look at influence as a definition. We'll kind of define it and just see how some people define influence. What separates it from other things like motivation or persuasion, or are they actually pretty similar? We'll look at some different variables that go into influence, like what's going to impact whether or not you're actually able to influence somebody in the first place. What are going to be some of those barriers that you could run into? We'll look at some influence outcomes. So like when you're trying to motivate somebody, persuade somebody to influence them, what are the possibilities, like what could happen? Like when we try to influence and persuade people to get something done for us, like does it work all the time? Well, no. Like there's different outcomes that can happen when we're trying to influence somebody. And then we'll cover the different influencing styles. There's a lot. There's a lot of influencing styles, but it's important to know where you fall on this, this list of influencing styles, because some of them are going to be much more beneficial and effective than others. Some of them are going to be like, okay, maybe you can mix them together. And some of them are just really bad. Like if you do these and this is your main influencing style, you're probably not going to be a very good leader or a very good manager. We'll look at some influencing tactics, just some different ways that we can influence others, and then also some ways that we're influenced ourselves. Maybe we don't even realize it. We'll talk about communicating with influence, really looking at, in this particular section, kind of what it looks like to have a difficult conversation with somebody. Some people refer to this as like a crucial conversation. Like, has anybody had a situation at work where they had to talk to somebody and it was like a difficult conversation that you had to have with them? Like it wasn't an easy conversation.Maybe you're on the receiving end of that, like your manager or your boss pulls you in the office, like, hey, we need to sit down and talk. Anybody ever have any of those conversations? Not a great employees, but we're hiring. If anybody wants to come work with me at Walgreens. And then we'll look at some of the characters of a person with influence. Like what is the type of person who is able to influence others? Because I'm sure we've all worked with leaders, we've all worked with team members, with peers. We've had classmates, maybe working on group projects, class projects. Like they're not very influential people, right? Like they're not motivating you to get anything done. You're the one always having to motivate them to try to do their part, to try to accomplish something, to try to get something done. And so we'll look at what kind of person actually is able to influence others. And then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So again, if there's any questions or anything as we go through, y'all feel free to ask some questions. All right, so real quick, we can just look at influence as a definition. This is, like, if you just open your dictionary, get on Google, type in influence. Don't type in, things not working. If you type in that, I don't know what's going to come up, but if you type in influence, this is the definition that you're going to get. It's the capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior, or someone, or something, or the effect itself. I don't really like that definition. I think it's kind of convoluted, and honestly, I'm not really sure what it means. So I like this one better. This is from Harvard Business Review. Their definition says that influence is your ability to persuade others and have a positive impact on your organization's decisions, plans, and results. So to me, that's a much more meaningful definition of influence. And when we really get down to what we're talking about is the ability to convince someone, to persuade someone, to get someone to get things done, right? And there's a lot of ways that we can get things done. Like we can get things done like by yourself. Like you can just go out and just get crap done. Like it's pretty simple, right? You don't have to deal with anybody else. You don't have to deal with other people. You just go out, whatever you need to get done, you just get it done. And you can even come up with all these really cool books and methods and ways to go out and get things done by yourself, right? There's a guy named David Allen who has a book called Getting Things Done. Like getting any more straightforward than that, right? And you can separate your tasks into yeses and nos and trash lists, and it's like, it's craziness, right? So you can get things done yourself, but for you, as you move into the workforce and you develop into leaders and managers, and you have employees of your own, which I'm sure that unless you're going to work by yourself, some sort of like entrepreneurial venture where you don't have any team members or employees or anything, like you're all going to have a boss, or you're going to be somebody's boss. The goal, I'm assuming for many of you is, would you prefer to be someone else's boss or to have someone be your boss? Like we want to be the boss, right? Like we want to be the manager, we want to be the leader, we want to be the boss. And when that's your position, you're going to have to get a lot of things done through other people, right? Like just like I was saying earlier, I've got a lot of employees in my location, and if they weren't there, like I can't get all of these things done by myself. Like they're going to have to get a lot of these things done for me. We're going to have to partner together, work together to get a lot of these things done. And the big idea really here is that there's a lot of things that we need to get done, and as leaders, you can't do them by yourself. So if there's something to take away from that when we're thinking of influence, that's really the big idea. You can't get everything done yourself. You're going to have to get it done through other people, and really how you manage that is going to define whether or not you're going to be successful or not, right? Like successful leaders are those who are able to motivate, encourage, inspire, influence other people to get things done in many ways for them or alongside them. And if you can't do that, you're not going to have a successful career, or at least you're not going to go very far. Or maybe you just really like to work for other people. I don't know. But there's a couple of things that when you are able to influence that are going to be beneficial to you, you're going to get more done, right? Like, do you think that you get more done by yourself or more done when you have a bunch of people also doing stuff for you? Yeah, like if you got a team, you got a bunch of other people that are working with you, working alongside you, trying to get things done, you're going to get a lot more accomplished, right? So you're going to be more efficient. Who thinks that if you have a bunch of different people from different cultures, different backgrounds, maybe different socioeconomic statuses, all these different areas and arenas of life, that you're going to have more creativity and come up with better ideas and more innovation? Would y'all agree with that? Yeah. Right? So you're going to be more efficient, you're going to be more effective, you're going to be more innovative, you're going to get a lot more done. And then of course, across all of this, when you're working with a diverse group of people, you're working with a bunch of people, you're going to build relationships, right? So you're going to have a good network of people that work alongside you. And so when you need a favor, right, when you need somebody to do something for you, when you need somebody to help you out, you're going to have that person there because now you've built relationships with other people who can step in and help you in those situations, right? Or like nobody likes you, you're like the worst person on the team, and anytime you do anything, like nobody wants to talk to you, right? You can be that person too. That's not a person who has influence, right? So like I said a second ago, I know this might seem like dramatic, so the success of your career depends on your ability to influence. I only put that in here because that's what the title on the paper that they gave me for the presentation says. But it's true that the success of your career really does depend on your ability to get things done through other people. You know, how are you going to get buy-in from your subordinates, the people who work underneath you? How are you going to get buy-in from your peers and be able to collaborate together with one another? How are you going to, convince your boss, like, hey, like that idea that you have, like, kind of sucks. Also, like, my job kind of sucks. Can we make my job better? Is there anything that we can do about this? Or like, that's managing up. That's about influence. Are you going to be able to influence your boss and the people that you work underneath and work for? Are you going to, make sure that your voice is heard regarding decisions? Like, if you work on a team, obviously, a lot of us were doing class projects and things like that. When I finished my MBA, we had a really big group project that we had to do, big paper and a big, exit project that we had to do. And if you're not able to work together and communicate with those people, that process sucks. Like, it really is not fun to be on that team where you're the only person who's contributing, the only person who's working, and nobody wants to listen to you what you have to say and the decisions that you think that you should make as a team. Has anybody ever been on a team like that? Like, just a sucky team? We can be honest. Yeah, it's not fun to be on a team like that, right? You want to make sure that your voice is heard. You want to make sure that decisions that get made, that you're a part of that decision process. In my position, like I was saying, I have a lot of policies and procedures that people have to follow. They have to be compliant with them, and if they're not, people can die, people can get sick, people can stay sick and not get any better. I can lose my job, which like, I don't want to do that. And a lot of you said maybe you're going to work in the plant or an engineer or the chemical industry. We all are very aware of like the TPC explosion, right? Is anybody impacted by the explosion in here? That's good, that's awesome. Now, at some point across time, right, there were policies and procedures that were not being followed. Like, now after the fact, everybody's like, oh yeah, there's like a lot of things we didn't do correctly here, right? So there was things that didn't go accordingly, like we were supposed to, and a lot of that comes down to influence. Was the manager, was the boss, were the shift leaders, were the people, were the supervisors, were they able to influence these people to do their jobs correctly? And had they been able to do that, would we have had the same issue, the same problem that we just experienced? Maybe, maybe not, right? There's a ton of factors, but it's something to think about. So are you going to be able to influence people in that way? In a smaller scale, just to like freaking follow the rules. Like some of our policies at Walgreens, like really simple. Right? You have to wear a uniform, you have to have a name tag, whatever, all this basic stuff. But that's still influence. Like, are you just not going to do that? Can I fire you? Or you just might put the freaking name tag on, like super easy, and we go about our ways, right? Just rules, just basic little things. Maybe you're an entrepreneur and you want to start a new business, and you have to make a pitch, right? Has anybody here had to put together like an elevator pitch in any of their courses or anything like that? Yeah, right? That's influence. Like, are you going to be the person who's like, I need like 15 more minutes in this elevator, dude, to like finish this pitch? Or are you going to be able to be concise, to be effective in your communication and influence that person with your storytelling and what you're trying to share with them to get funding or whatever it is from another investor? Maybe you want to impact some change within your organization. Maybe you work at a job and you're like, man, this job could be a lot better if they would just do A, B, and C. I've got some really great ideas, and maybe if somebody would listen to these ideas, maybe this place would not be such a crappy place to work or whatever, right? Well, you have the power to change that if you're the type of person who knows how to influence, if you're the type of person who knows how to communicate with influence. And then also right now, just before we go on, like we're in an election year, right? So what do you think a lot of these candidates that are running for the presidency are trying to do?
Learn how to influence.
Influence, right? Most of them are like not very good at it, but they're trying to influence people to vote for them, to get their vote, to collect their vote, right? So influence from the littlest things to the most important things is going to be a part of our lives. It never goes away. And we're not really going to get into it today, but when you think of like advertising, marketing, is there any advertising or marketing students in here? A couple of us? Yeah, that's going to be a lot of your job, right? If you go into that industry, it's all influence, right? Like everything literally about that industry is about influence and being able to influence people to make purchases and to make certain decisions. So that's the definition I like to go with. Those are some of the things that are behind that, but it's your ability to persuade others and have a positive impact on your organization's plans, decisions, plans, and results. Let me put this, it's not going to work. That's a beautiful slide. Let's see if I can interpret it. All right, so influence variables. There's a lot that goes into influence, right? There's a lot of things that are a lot of factors that go into play. I keep turning my back to y'all, I'm so sorry. And I feel for this camera. I'm going to be like in and out of the video the whole time. All right, so when we think of whether or not your influence is going to be effective right now, are you actually going to influence somebody, or are you going to just like fall flat and like not really accomplish anything that you're trying to accomplish? Well, it's going to depend on the type of tactic that you use. That's one factor. Like there's different influence types. There's different ways to influence people, different variables, different methods that you can use to try to influence people. The objectives of the influence attempt, right? It's like, what are you trying to accomplish? What's your purpose? What are you trying to do with this influence attempt? Like, what's the outcome that you're trying to ensure takes place? The relative power of an agent and a target. Now we're like in the middle of a class, I'm sorry. The relative power of an agent and a target. So basically, you, the agent, and the target of your influence, right? So like if you're the boss and they're the employee, like there's going to be a certain power relationship between the two of you, right? And that's going to impact whether or not you're able to influence them and how that influence occurs. Which brings me to that next point about their relationship. So that's really important when it comes to influence. Is really understanding like if it's your boss and you're the employee, like y'all have a certain relationship, right? So that's going to be a factor when you're trying to influence them. Like, are you going to talk to your boss like you would talk to one of your teammates? Or are you going to talk to your boss like you would talk to one of your employees? Probably not, right? So this is going to be very important. The agent's skill in exercising power. Basically, like, do you suck at influencing people? Right? You can be like very poor, very bad at influencing people. It's definitely possible. Who in here feels like they're a really good influencer? Like you can persuade people to get things done. Like you're an influencer. No way. All right, pay very close attention. Yeah, whether or not you have a skill in influencing power and using these techniques and these tools is going to make a difference, of course. And the target's prior attitudes and perceptions about the requested action. So these are all different things that are going to go into influence, right? So when you're thinking of having to persuade somebody to make a decision, to adopt an idea that you have, anything along those lines, there's a lot of variables that you have to consider. So if you were to say that, or if I were to ask you, which I guess I will, do you think influencing is simple or it's actually a little more complicated than we thought it might be? Complicated or simple? It's a little more complicated, right? Like most of us think that you can just say like, hey, freaking do this, like there, I influence you, like go get it done. You can, like that's definitely an influencing style. It's not very effective. It's not going to build relationships or any of those things that we just talked about, but it is an influencing style, right? But influence is a lot more complex than a lot of us realize. There's a lot more that goes into it, a lot more variables to consider when you're looking at influence. And also, just so everybody knows, I wish I came up with this, but like I didn't. There's been a lot of really great research that's been done on influence, the power of influence, persuasion, for the last really, well, since like, I don't know, the Greeks. But here recently, in the last 30 years, there's been a lot of really good research that's come out within management around influence. And so these are from a 1992 paper from the, I think it's a academic managerial journal, some journal. And this is really the most recent and some of the best research that have come out on the different variables that go into being able to influence somebody. And something to think about as we're looking at this that's really important, we'll come back to it a little bit later as well, is this idea of this relative power of an agent and a target in their relationship. All right, so especially those of you who are about to graduate and you're going to start this new career, again, I'm sure that many of you, like your role or your, objective is to like move up in the company. Right? Like you want to make more money, you want to have more influence, you want to have more power, you want to be able to, like, I don't know, pay your bills, provide for your family, all of those sorts of things. And as you move into leadership, you'll see that your position of leadership and where you fall in like that hierarchy in your job is going to play a big difference, or play a big role rather, in how influential you are. right? Like if people see you as like this peon, like you just like put stuff in a bag, like dude, I'm not gonna listen to you. Like you're not very important in this company. That's gonna influence whether or not you're able to be influential, right? But if you're like the guy that comes in the suit, like has anybody seen that movie recently, Ford versus Ferrari, or Ford and Ferrari? I can't remember exactly. So anybody seen it? Like I just watched it the other night, and there's a scene in there where Ford Jr., I guess, walks into this factory. It's like a Ford manufacturing factory. He's got a suit on. He's just like pushing past people, like get out of my way. He stands up on the top of this manufacturing facility, and he just leans over and he yells at all the workers, and he says, basically, shifts over, go home, and don't come back to work unless you have unless you can contribute an idea to our manufacturing process. Everybody leave. He just shuts the whole facility down. Like you could have that kind of power as well, right? Where you just go in, tell everybody to go home, you walk out, and you have a cool pinstripe suit. But that relationship can really be looked at in two ways, right? You have positional power, so that's that kind of power. If you just walk in, and you tell people what to do, and they do it, and everybody's scared, like hiding their desks and stuff. Like we have people like that at Walgreens, like we have our RVP, our regional vice presidents that go in to make rounds, and when they come in, everybody kind of panics, like, Stephen Johnson's here, like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? So we have positional power, where you just tell people to do stuff, and you're able to utilize your position, or you can have personal power. And that's really what we want to look at as we get into some more of this material is you want to have a relational power where people actually like you and they listen to you because they like you and they want to participate and get things done and they're motivated because they actually think you're like a pretty good person as opposed to a jerk or you just have a suit so I have to listen to your environment. Right? So this idea of positional power and personal power are very important. And plus if you think about it, I don't know how many of you are already kind of started your careers. Like I said, some of you may already be in like an internship. But really, organizations and companies, they're really moving away now from a lot of these hierarchical type companies. Especially in entrepreneurship and a lot of like tech industries. Everybody kind of walks in like flip-flops and a t-shirt. Like everybody's kind of like everybody's peers and everybody just works together. Everything's about collaboration. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. It's made a lot of people like very rich. But that's a much different type of environment than this, chain of command, top-down type of structure, right? So if you're not able to, use this personal power, you only have this positional power, that's all you know how to use, tell people to get things done, and yet you're on a team where everything is done by collaboration, everything is accomplished by working together, like you're gonna be the guy or girl that nobody likes. Like you're gonna be the person nobody wants to work with, right? Because all you know how to do is tell people to get things done as opposed to actually motivating them to get things done. In order to do that, and we'll talk about this later as well, you really need to develop something called social capital. Does anybody know what social capital is?
Like learning how to converse better.
Okay, yeah, like learning how to have better communication and have a conversation with people, that's definitely part of it. Anybody else? Somebody just like make a wild list. Social capital. All right, well, thank you. What's your name, man?
Jorge.
Jorge, yeah, appreciate it. Social capital is the relational part of your, obviously we think capital of money, right? We're thinking like our resources. All right, so social capital, think of it as your relational resources that you have. Do people trust you? Do people listen when you talk and when you have a decision that you want to contribute? Do you have a good reputation in your company? Do you practice, are you able to practice give and take? Are you the type of person who's always taking, or are you out actually giving of yourself and of your time and of your energy and of your knowledge and skills back to the industry or to your company, to your job? Right? All of those things are going to build social capital for you. Do you actually know what to do at your job? Like you just show up and you're like, I'm here, I get paid, but honestly, I have no idea what's happening. Well, if that's you, like nobody's going to come to you when they have a question about something about the job. Right? Has anybody ever had that happen where somebody walks up to you and they ask you a question and you're like, dude, I don't know. Like I just work here. You're like, exactly, that's why I asked you, right? If you have know-how, if you just have that kind of wherewithal to common sense almost about your job and your industry, like people are going to come to you, they're going to ask you questions, and all of those things are going to build social capital for you to where you can develop this personal power. All right, so real quick, we won't spend a lot of time on these because I know we've got about 30 minutes or so, but some influence outcomes, like what can happen? Like say you influence somebody, you tell them to get something done. What's the result going to be? Well, it could be a couple of things, right? It could be that they make a commitment. Like, great, success. Like, ask them to do something. I influenced them, they got it done. They're enthusiastic about it. They're excited about it. They want to do it, right? You've got their commitment. They're going to do a good job when you garner somebody's commitment, right? They're going to do a job well because they're bought in. They want to be a part of what's happening. They could be compliant, right? They could just do it because you told them to, and it's going to get done, right? Like they're not excited about it. They're not like, jumping over fences and just happy that they have to comply, but they're going to do it. They're going to get it done. Or they could be resistant. This means they're not committed to it and they're not compliant. They're not doing anything that you ask them to do, basically, right? So, in other words, when we think of influence, earlier we mentioned that it's kind of complex, like there's a lot more to it than just telling somebody to do something. Outcomes are a lot more complex too, like it doesn't always work out to where you want somebody to do something and then they just do it. Right? So who's been in a situation where you've tried to influence somebody, persuade somebody, reason with somebody to get something done, and like it just doesn't happen? Has anybody ever had that experience? A couple of us? Yeah, like it doesn't always work, so to speak. Right? Influence is varied results, I guess you could say. But the goal obviously would always be to, at the ideal anyway, is commitment. Somebody who's excited to get something done and they also get it done and they do it well, or at least they're compliant. Maybe they're not excited about it, but they got it done anyway. So those are just some different outcomes that you can run into when you think of influence. So let's look at some influencing styles. And there's a lot, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on these. There's 9 of them. But we will talk a little bit about each one really quick. And as we're going through these two, just be thinking about yourself, right? Like, what is your influencing style? Because where you land, again, on this list is going to be very important because some of these are more effective than others. Some of these are sort of effective and maybe, you use them in a combination of, with some other styles and they can be more effective. And some of them, like, they're just not very effective. Like, you might get compliance, but most likely you're just going to be kind of resistant. So you can have inspirational appeals. That's an influencing style. So this is trying to build enthusiasm by appealing to others' emotions, their ideals, or their values. So if this is you, this could be, do you encourage others towards your position by communicating a sense of shared mission or possibility, right? Like you, somebody who's trying to, you're a storyteller and you're trying to get people bought into whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. You could have a consultation style. So this is where you're getting others to participate in the planning, making decisions and different changes that are going on. So basically trying to get other people on board with you, and you're trying to get some of their input and some of their support. Personal appeals, referring to friendship and loyalty when making requests. So you're going to influence them and you're going to bring in your relationship. You're going to bring that into the conversation, right? When you make your appeal, when you make your request. Exchange, so this is making express or implied promises and trading favors. This is kind of like that quid pro quo, right? Like this for that. Ingratiation, getting someone in a good mood prior to making a request. This, I'm like on the fence. They put this in the middle. I don't know. I feel like that was a pretty good idea to get somebody in a good mood before you make a request. Yeah, they've done some studies where they had lawyers who were basically looking over parole cases for inmates who were going to get whether or not they would be, get a parole hearing. And they found in the study that if you were more likely to get a parole hearing if you caught them after lunch than before lunch, right? Rational persuasion, trying to convince someone with reason, logic, or facts. Who in here feels like they're the rational persuasion type of person? Right, you're trying to drop your knowledge on them, the facts, like here's what's going to happen if we don't do this, here's the numbers. And you're just trying to convince them through logic and through reason. And you're leveraging all of those things to try to convince them. There's pressure, demanding compliance or using intimidation threats. That's like, hey, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job. If you don't do this, I'm going to fire you. If you don't do this, you're not going to get a raise. If you don't do this, I'm going to take away your position, etc. And then there's legitimating, which is basing a request on one's authority or right, organizational rules or policies, or express or implied support from superiors. Last one is this coalition, so getting others to support your effort to persuade someone or someone else. So basically, like you're going to get everybody together, and like, man, we like to just all come together and decide that we're going to do this, and then present this to the boss or whoever. Like, we'll definitely get this done, right? So as we go through here, just some things to think about. Like, for example, we looked at exchange. That's that person who's, are you looking to make compromises or concessions to reach an outcome? Maybe you're that person, we just mentioned about legitimating that kind of assertive attitude with your influence, where you're really relying on kind of like your bravado, your confidence to go out there and convince somebody to get something done? Are you the type of person who challenges other people's ideas and you kind of push back against other people? Has anybody in here ever taken the Enneagram test? Personality test? What number are you?
2.
2?
I'm 3.
3? 5? Okay.
2.
2? All right, okay. I'm an 8. All right, so that's the challenger. So this is me. A lot of times, like, I push back a lot and I argue a lot and whatever. Anyway, we can move on from that. Some people have the Enneagram. I like it. But that could be you. Like, you could be that asserting type of personality, or you could be the person with coalition. They call this bridging, where you're really trying to influence outcomes by, uniting with other people, connecting with other people, trying to get some, maybe another boss or another manager to get on your side of the decision. And here's the thing about this list, right? So it's probably kind of obvious already, but it's basically your most effective to your least effective styles of influence. So as you look at this and you're kind of thinking about yourself, like, okay, like, where do I fall in this list of influence styles? Like, am I the inspirational person, the storyteller? Am I the rational person, the facts, the reason, the logics person? Am I the coalition? Like, I'm just going to get everybody on my side, and then once everyone agrees with me, then we'll just take it to the boss or whoever and get this thing knocked out, right? So where you really want to be, and I'll say this too, right? So there's going to be times where every one of these could be necessary and effective, right? So it's not that, like, these are good, and then these on the bottom are like the bad. Like, oh, you're a bad person because you use these techniques, or you have these tactics, or this is your influence style. It's not good or bad, it's effective to least effective, right? So don't think of it in, like, moral terms, think of it in just effectiveness. The top of the list is going to be much more effective across the board, especially when you think of commitment and not just compliance. Whereas as you get to the bottom, you're going to be met with more compliance and resistance. All right, so just something to think about with your own influence style. Again, as you go out and start your career, or those of you who already have, where you fall on this list with different styles is going to make a big impact on how influential you are in the workplace. So really quick, we can talk about some influencing tactics. So there's a guy named Robert Cialdini. I don't know if anybody have ever heard of him before. I know we talked a little bit about him when I was finishing my communication degree, but he's basically one of the leading researchers and thinkers and authors on influence. He actually has a book, and I brought it with me, called, when you know it, Influence. Right? Couldn't be more simple. But that's one of the best books that's really been written on influence. He has a new book that just came out, I think last year, called Persuasion. It's another really, really interesting book. But he's, like, if you're interested in influence, or you're trying to, like, maybe you're trying to figure out how to, like, dupe somebody. Like, how can I get over on this person? Maybe that's you. I don't know. But he'd be the guy to read. He would be the person who's really got a lot of the most, the best research and information around influence. And in this book, it came out quite a few years ago. But he goes over 6 tactics, and really he looks at these negatively, right? Like, he's looking at these in the way that people get, like, worked over all the time by whether it's marketers or just day-to-day life. Like, think like car salesmen, right? Like, everybody has this perception of the car salesman as, like, this kind of, like, shady dude, you know what I mean? Like, his, like, pants are up here and he's just kind of, like, I don't know, like some creepy old guy or something. Like, obviously that's not hard if you're a car salesman, I'm sorry. That's not what all car salesmen are like, but that's kind of that perception that we get of the car salesman, right? The snake oil salesman, whatever. And he kind of wrote this book in an attempt to help people, like, understand and recognize when exactly this is taking place. Like, oh, this tactic is happening right now, right? But you can also look at these in a positive way, and you can use these for good, right? It's like a superpower. Like, you can use these for good and positive ways to influence people as well. So real quick, reciprocation is this idea that people repay in kind, right? You give what you want to receive. So this is an influence tactic. Right, so this is the person who's, again, like I mentioned earlier, not always taking at work, but you're also giving. You're giving of your time, you're giving of your knowledge, you're giving of your, your skills, your resources, the things that you know that maybe someone else doesn't know. So maybe you're training a new team member. Are you the person who's going to actually, like, help out that new person? Or are you that person that's like, hey, can you get, like, do this for me, please? You know, you're new, you don't know anything, I'm just going to tell you what to do. Like, you can practice reciprocation. There's also commitment and consistency. This is this idea that people align with their clear commitments. So basically, when you already commit to something, you're much more likely afterwards to commit to something else that's similar, right? When you make this kind of a public display of maybe a certain belief that you have or a position that you hold, You're going to be much more likely, now that you've publicly said, like, hey, this is where I stand on this, well, now you kind of have to defend that position a little bit, right? It's like, oh crap, like I said this out loud and all these people heard it. You know, where all these people have, you know, are familiar with me and my character and my person, who I am now, because I've said these certain things, made these commitments public. Now I kind of have to just live those things out now. You're going to be much more likely to do that, right? They did some research, they did a study where I went around to some houses in a neighborhood and they had them put a little sign in their yard telling drivers to drive safely, right? This little tiny sign. And then they went back to some other houses with a giant sign with like crazy letters on it that said, drive responsibly, and it was like this huge thing. The neighborhood that never had the tiny signs, like 90% of the people said no. Like, no, I'm not putting this crazy thing in my yard. So they went back to the people who put the tiny sign in their yard, 75% of them said yes. Right? It's like they committed to this little tiny thing, and now these same people come back with this big other thing and this big other request, and they commit to it because they've already had this prior commitment that they've made. So they're just trying to be consistent with the decisions that they've already made. Social proof is another one where people follow the lead of similar others. So this is kind of like when you're going to eat and you're like, dude, I'm so hungry, I have no idea what I want. What are you guys getting? Has that ever been anybody? It's me like 90% of the time. I'm like, dude, I have no idea. Right? That's kind of this idea of social proof. That you're going to, when you don't know what decision to make or you're uncertain of the decision that you need to make, you're just going to look around at everybody else and be like, all right, what is everybody else doing? Right? One of the projects that we actually did here at Lamar when I was finishing my communications degree was we went and it was actually to demonstrate social proof. We went and stood in front of the library, right? And we had one person on our group, they went and stood in front of the library and they just did this. And they looked up at the top of the library. And we were going to see like, okay, how many people are going to like see this like crazy person, obviously, and stop and actually see like, what's this dude looking at? So like a gargoyle? Yeah. And so we had one person do it, nobody stopped. We had two people do it, nobody stopped. We had three people do it, and all of a sudden a couple people started to stop. They're like, okay, like somebody about to like jump off the roof, like what the hell, you know? And so they look up, and then we had 5 people, our entire group, and all of a sudden there's like 15 people, they're all walking by like, dude, what in the world is, like where are they looking, right? So people are uncertain, they're unsure, they have no idea what the heck is going on, but they see other people doing it, so they're like, I guess we'll just like join in and see what's happening here too, right? So that can be an influencing tactic, this idea of social proof. Liking, this is pretty straightforward, right? People like those who like them, who thinks that this is true. Right? If people like you, you're much more likely to like them back, right? And so a way that you can use this to your advantage when you're trying to influence people is you can, for one, you can try to uncover some real similarities between yourself and other people, right? If you're able to, you know, figure out some things that you have in common with other people, you're going to be much more likely to get them involved, you know, on your team, to be able to associate with you, to get things done, to just be better team players. If they realize that you have some similarities and that you like them. And then also you can offer people praise, right? Who here feels like they have a hard time like praising other people? I'm like, yeah, I'm like on the fence sometimes, right? But if you can become that person who offers genuine, consistent praise to others, like I promise people will like you more, right? If you're telling people they're awesome, hey, great job, thank you so much, man, I couldn't have done this without you. Like, I'm really glad that you're on my team. Thank you for helping with this assignment. I really appreciate it. That's going to be the person who helps you again the next time that you might need something, right? As opposed to that person who like stayed up all night to help finish your part of the project because you whatever happened, and you don't even say thank you to them. Like, they won't do it again, right? So liking is another influencing tactic. And the number 6 is scarcity or scarcity. That people want more of what they can have less of, right? So this is, I actually use this at work with some of my leadership team in that I try to give them some information that like might come down from corporate, like, you know, there's like some news coming down the pipeline about some upcoming changes or things that are going to be happening, right? Some like insider information, some insider news that they might not normally be privy to, like that might not be something that they normally would get access to, like they don't have like an email, you know, at work. But I try to share some of this information with them, let them know what's coming in the loops and different things that are happening, because that's something that normally they wouldn't have access to. And it just helps build a rapport, like, oh, he's giving you like the inside scoop of what's going on, right? So scarcity is another one of those influencing tactics. Any questions about any of this? Is everybody like 1:30? I have to go back to work after this, so I might just take my time. All right, so when we're communicating with other people, there's inevitably going to be times where we find ourselves having difficult conversations, right? Like not every influence conversation, not every request is met with like, absolutely, yes sir, let's like do this thing, right? Sometimes you're going to have difficult conversations. It's a really great book. I brought it with me too. These are just some of my books that I really enjoy when it comes to influence. It's called Crucial Conversations. Tools are talking when stakes are high. I really recommend it. If you're the type of person who might find yourself in some of these difficult conversations. But basically what they do is they work through how to get from having an inability to communicate with somebody to actually ending up with like getting some results and getting some things done, right? Because that's not always an easy process. So just a couple of tips really is what this is to help you when you're having, when you need to have that difficult conversation with someone to influence them to get something done or to join your team or whatever the case may be, right? When we say get something done, like that's obviously like a very broad spectrum of things that we could be talking about. So, but there's some different things that we can do. The first thing that they mentioned is to start with the heart. I think this is really good. Basically make sure that we're on the same page and that our intentions are very clear. Right? Like letting them know, like, hey, this is what we're about to talk about, this is why we're having this conversation. I just want to make sure we're starting off on the right foot, so to speak. Right? You want to start with the heart, let your intentions be known, and make sure that we're on the right focus and not getting off track. And then learn to look, know when it's unsafe. So there's going to be times in conversations when you're trying to influence somebody when that conversation is going to like totally go awry and things start flying off the handle and you're like, okay, like this is not even what we were talking about initially, right? Like this conversation is no longer safe, so to speak. And you as a leader need to be aware of that. Like you need to be the person who, like he's saying here, learns to look. Like your ears are open, your eyes are open, like you're reading the situation, like okay, when things start to get a little wacky, like I know I need to like back off, or maybe I touched a sensitive subject here, and their tone of voice changed, their eyes, maybe they're looking at me crazy now. You need to be able to read that and be aware of that in that situation. And then you need to be able to, when that happens, to make it safe, to facilitating an open dialogue. You know what I mean? Like as a leader, as a manager, as someone who's going to have employees working underneath them, like you control this environment 100%, right? Like as a boss, you're going to be the person who determines where this conversation is going to go, where it's headed, and whether or not you're actually going to be able to engage in this open conversation. Master your stories. This is basically the idea that even though there's going to be tension, like in these conversations, that you can still maintain good dialogue with another person by mastering your stories. So basically it's the idea of like what are we really talking about here? You know what I mean? People are going to take things in these conversations like very personally. They're going to think it could be an attack on their character. It could be an attack on who they are, their beliefs. People hold those things very near and dear to their heart. So when you start touching on some of these things that maybe they take to offense, right? You have to be able to make sure that you're controlling the story of what's really happening here. Like this is really what this conversation is about. This conversation is not about you. This conversation is about this behavior or this incident or whatever it may be, and be able to control those stories that are being created in that moment. Share your views persuasively, so make it very clear, like, hey, this is where we're headed, this is where we're going, this is what we're talking about, what we're trying to accomplish. Explore others' paths, or in other words, be a good listener. Does anybody here feel like they're a good listener? Someone? Anybody feel like they're a bad listener? Who's married? I feel like I'm a good listener. Sometimes my wife says otherwise. But you need to be a good listener, right? You need to be able to, just like earlier, learn to look, keep your eyes, keep your ears open. This is the same kind of concept here, that you're a good listener, that you're following along with them on their path, so to speak, right? Like you're tracking, like you're with them on this journey together. And then lastly, move to action. So you take this dialogue, this conversation, and the whole idea of this whole concept of influence, right? Like we want to get some things done. In other words, we want to get some results. And that's where you want to end up. You want to convert this dialogue to results in the end. You don't ever want to leave this conversation completely open-ended to where like there's no resolution to what we just talked about. There's no clear steps forward to what we just talked about. You want to create some real actions, a real plan, like what's going to happen next. All right, so last couple of things, and we'll wrap up. We'll talk about a person with influence. So when we think of influence, a lot of times we can think of like motivation, right? Like I'm influencing somebody, that's the same thing as just like motivating them. And it can be, right, depending on how we define it, like maybe you define them very similar to where to motivate somebody is to influence them. But the way that I kind of look at it is motivation is more about the other party, whereas influence is more about yourself. Right? A person with influence is a person with a certain type of character, a certain type of lifestyle, like they live and carry themselves in a certain way, and that's why they're able to influence. That's the personal power that we talked about earlier. And if you want to be that person, if you want to get buy-in, you need to have that power, that social capital that we talked about earlier, to have a good reputation. People trust you. People want to listen to you. You basically you're able to add value to those people who are around you, as opposed to always taking from them. So we want to be a person who has charisma, not just energy, right? Like it would have been very easy for me to walk in and like jump on the table and like wave my hands and be like, we're about to talk about influence, everybody. And besides y'all thinking I'm insane, right? I probably would have had everybody's attention, like, okay, like I didn't even care about influence before, but now like I'm super interested. Like, what is this guy about to do? And I backflip off the table, right? You can have energy, and that'll get some followers, that'll get some people, but you really want to have charisma, which is much more intangible, right? This is like kind of I'm sure we've all been around leaders. It could be, again, it could be at work, it could be a family member, it could be somebody. They just kind of they carry themselves in such a way, they have this persona, when you're around them, you're like I'm going to listen to this person. Like they just have something about them. That's charisma, right? Like they just have this attitude, and they carry themselves in such a way that you want to listen to what they have to say, right? And a lot of this comes down to being a person who understands the purpose and the why behind what they do. Right, so you want to be the kind of person where, if it's your job, if it's a belief, whatever it is, that you truly care, have a passion about whatever that thing is, and when you do, you just kind of exude charisma, right? Like people know, like who here feels like they're passionate about something. It could be anything. Like there's just something, maybe, I don't know. He's pointing at you, and you're like, dude, I'm just trying to stay away. What are you passionate about?
Baseball.
Baseball. All right. Do you play for Lamar?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. All right. So I'm sure when people are around you, they know who you are, they know that you play baseball, they know that you're probably like killing it, right? They just kind of, you have a charisma about you when it comes to sports, to athletics, to baseball, right? Like you don't really have to do anything, but if they're around you long enough, they're going to recognize like, okay, like this guy cares about baseball, cares about this sport, right? Anyone who's passionate about something, if you're truly passionate about it, like people are going to recognize that when you're around them. And that's what you want to have as a leader. You want to have charisma, not just this ability to, which I cannot backflip off this table, by the way, but you don't want to have just energy. Right? Person with influence, they don't manipulate, but rather they inspire. Right? So when you talk about influence and you talk about persuasion, you can very easily fall into manipulation, where you start to use these tools and these tactics. Once you become very aware of them, you're like, okay, like I don't know, tell this person they're like a good person, I'm kind of nice to them, they're going to be really nice to me. Like, all right, like now I can use this to my advantage. Right? You can manipulate people using influence, but rather what you really need to do is be that person who is inspiring. Right, be that person who, they're a storyteller. That person who's can get people to be loyal, right? And again, this kind of goes back to that why. That person who's passionate about what they're doing and what they're talking about, they're going to be able to inspire you to join their team, to be a part of what's going on, as opposed to you having to manipulate them to get things done. They take actions and solve problems. So be the kind of person who finds and solves real problems for your organization or for your team or for your peers, for your supervisors. Like be a go-getter, so to speak, right? Like you want to be the person who's like, hey, this is broken, this is wrong, this needs to be fixed. Like I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it. Like, I want to go out and I'm going to be the person who tries to make an impact here, who tries to make a difference. You want to be a team player. Team players are the kind of people who embrace change. That's a big part of it. Right? Like when things are in the organization are kind of going in a different direction than maybe they had previously when you first started, you want to be the person who's kind of a change agent. Like you're on board, like, hey, this is the direction we're going now, and I'm all about it. Like I'm part of the team, let's get this thing done. Like at Walgreens, for example, not to bore you with like Walgreens stuff, but the state of pharmacy has changed a lot over the last 20 years. Amazon, of all people, has gotten into pharmacy in the last few years. They're actually doing, they bought a company called PillPack, which is now doing mail order prescriptions. Like I just got an email the other day from PillPack with Amazon saying, hey, we can just ship your medicine to your door. And I'm like, yeah, please don't send this to anybody else. Right? So like there's a lot of competition and challenges within the pharmacy industry. And so we're having to do a lot of changes within our company to try to stay relevant in a very quickly changing, fast-paced industry. Right? And so the person who's on board with these changes, who's like, all right, this is the direction the company's going, like let's just make it happen, let's do it, I'm on board. They're going to go a lot further. They're going to be a lot more influential than a person that's like, dude, this company sucks. I hate this place now. I don't even want to work here anymore. Right? You're not going to be, well, you may be influential, but not in a positive way, right? Like you're not going to be influential in the way that you want to be. But you want to be a team player. You want to have an informed opinion. Like, know what you're talking about. Be a contributor to your workplace, right? Like, you're that person again who's, hey, can you help me with this? You're like, I don't know what's going on, dude. I just work here. And you're like, I don't understand how that makes any sense, right? Be somebody who contributes. It has informed opinions about what's going on. Admit when you're wrong. This is something very hard for a lot of us, I'm sure, to like really take in. Like, does anybody here have a hard time sometimes admitting when you're wrong? If we're honest, yeah, like I'm sure all of us have had an experience where you're wrong and you're like, I'm just not going to say anything about this, right? Be quick to admit that you're wrong. I mean, Dale Carnegie would say be enthusiastic about admitting that you're wrong. And it does a couple of things, right? One, it shows honesty, transparency, that you're willing to say like, hey, like I don't know everything, I don't always make the right decision, whatever. But here's something else that it does that I've actually learned just from my experience is it takes a lot of ammunition away from other people. Because what do other people want to do all the time? They want to criticize you. They want to be right. And so if you're wrong, they're like, well, here's my chance. Like, I can be right and you're wrong, right? But if you admit that you're wrong and talk about how wrong you were before they ever have a chance to tell you how wrong you are, well, now they have nothing to really say about it, right? You've kind of taken away all that ammunition of their accusations, the things that they were going to say about you, all of their critique. You're like, oh yeah, like I've already said that. Like, I know. Right? So it's very helpful in that way as well. A person with influence helps others succeed. I think it's very important that you support the people that you work with, your peers, your coworkers, you support your boss, like in the decisions that they make. Like, that's very important. Respecting other people, also very important. Making sure that you're just like all around a good person. You know what I mean? That you treat people with respect and with dignity. That you're not the person who's backbiting and the person who is taking advantage of other people maybe. And then lastly, just demonstrating integrity. That you're not gossiping. You're not the person that's, when nobody's looking, you're not actually working anymore. Right? That's not a person with integrity. You want to be a person who demonstrates integrity. And as you do all of these things, as you become this person with influence, it's going to be because you developed all of those habits, that social capital that we talked about a second ago. And there's a really great book that a lot of this is talked about. There's a leadership coach, and she writes about this, and there's another great Harvard Business Review book called The Manager's Handbook. That kind of lists some of these. There's some other resources that are really good. Start With Why, this book by Simon Sinek. It's one of my favorite books. Daniel Pink, has a book called Drive. That's really good about motivation. And it's like the classic, like if you just like reading books by old dead people that have been around for like 100 years, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is like the classic book on influence and building relationships. All that to say, like, yeah, I went to Lamar, and I love Lamar. It's a great school. But I didn't like write all this material myself because I'm a great researcher, right? This has been going on for years and years and years. Lots of great research, lots of great studies have been done. And there's been a lot of great leaders, managers, et cetera. Some of you probably worked for them in local businesses and places that they'll never have a book or anything. Like, a lot of this comes from those people who have a lot of great experiences, a lot of great knowledge and skills when it comes to the power of influence. So if you don't take it from me, I take it from them and a lot of their experiences. And I will say that just in my career as a leader and as a manager for a while, all of these things have really proven to be true experientially. As you begin to implement these things in your life as a leader, you'll realize, like, okay, like this makes sense, right? Like, this actually, surprisingly, somehow or another, like, this stuff works. So last, we'll just kind of wrap things up. We've got about 3 minutes left. Everybody can get out of here. We'll skip over that. Just Q&A, just really quick. Any questions? Somebody, anything, something at all about influence or motivation or whatever before we wrap up? What you got?
In your experience, in your job, what would you say is the most successful method of influence or persuasion? Trying to get someone to do something from like what you personally do.
Yeah. I think a big tool is, and actually Dale Carnegie talks about this a little bit, but this collaboration aspect where you can get other people, I don't want to say convinced because that's kind of a manipulative word, but getting other people on board, on your team when it comes to decision making, when it comes to what we're going to do, like in our store, for example, like, hey, let's try out this new thing. Like, it's never just me, like, here's what we're going to do, everybody. It's, hey, what do you think about this? Like, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is the direction that we should go? And here's what I think about it and why I think it's a good idea, but I really would appreciate your feedback. I really like your opinion and your thoughts on it. right? Because again, working with a diverse group of people, with a large number of people, like you're always going to have a lot more innovation and creativity as a group than you are by yourself. And so when people are like, oh, like, hey, we implemented my idea, or hey, like he actually used that thing that I said would work. You know what I mean? When you get people on board in that way, I find that to be very, very persuasive to get people bought in to the things that you're trying to do. That's a good question. Anybody else? Oh, my bad, what's up?
At the beginning, you gave us the definition for influence,
Uh-huh.
and it said positive to
Right.
that group. So would you say that there's like, you couldn't have influence if it was like negative?
No, that's a good question. So again, like Cialdini talks a lot about this in his book Influence, and I think it's really good. A lot of people use influence in these tools in a very negative way, right? So earlier, like I showed you like a list of influence styles, right? And I was like, hey, this isn't like, you know, a list of right and wrong. Rather, it's more of about effective and ineffective. That being said, you can definitely take something that is effective and use it in the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? So there's definitely people who use these tools and these tactics because they do work and they are proven to work and to be very effective to accomplish not so good things, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like the ability to influence, kind of like, you know, it's kind of being silly, but yeah, it's like a superpower, right? I mean, it really is. Like if you're good at influencing people, if you're good, you know, a lot of people refer to this as like a Machiavellian style of leadership, you know? You can definitely use influence in a way that hurts people. And I think historically you could look at tons and tons of events where people have used their power, especially their power of authority, to make really, you know, terrible impacts on the world. So.